Disclaimer: this program contains graphic descriptions of real crimes. Viewer discretion is advised. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. She never meant for anyone to get hurt. Yet there she was, kneeling on her kitchen floor, her trembling hands stained with blood that wasn't hers. Outside, sirens wailed, neighbors whispered, and somewhere upstairs her son was screaming a name she couldn't bring herself to answer. It had started with stolen glances, harmless laughter, a touch that lingered too long. But what began as a secret thrill quickly spiraled into betrayal, obsession, and finally, death. This is the story of Claire Dawson, a devoted wife, a loving mother, and the woman who risked it all for a forbidden romance with her son's best friend, a secret that would end in tragedy. On Maplewood Lane, everything looked perfect. The Dawson family home had roses blooming by the porch, a freshly painted white fence, and the smell of Claire Dawson's baking drifting through open windows on Sunday afternoons. To the outside world, Claire was the embodiment of grace, 42 years old, married to a successful husband, and mother to a bright young man, Ethan. But behind the polished smiles and spotless kitchen counters, Claire was lonely. Her husband, Michael, was always on the road. Airports, business trips, late night calls. Their conversations had dwindled down to bills, grocery lists, and schedules. The laughter they once shared had long since turned to silence. Her son, Ethan, now 20, was her pride. But as he grew into his own life, she found herself left behind, spending more evenings alone in a house that suddenly felt too big. And it was during these long, quiet nights that she began to notice someone else, someone who had been around her family for years, Jamie Carter, Ethan's best friend, 21 years old, the boy who had eaten at her table since middle school, who called her Mrs. Dawson, with respect, who stayed late after game nights to help her wash dishes. But Jamie wasn't a boy anymore. His broad shoulders, tired eyes, and quiet kindness made him stand out in ways she wished she hadn't noticed. One evening, as rain poured outside and Ethan had taken the family car, Jamie knocked on the Dawson door holding a forgotten textbook. Claire needed groceries, and without hesitation, Jamie offered her a ride. In the car, under the soft hum of the wipers, he confessed something small but piercing. "You know, Mrs. Dawson, your house feels more like home than mine ever did." Her heart caught in her throat. It was innocent, perhaps, but in that moment, with Michael hundreds of miles away and Jamie's eyes warm in the glow of the dashboard, Claire felt something stir that had been buried for years. She told herself it was nothing. Just a comment, just a ride, but deep down she knew a door had been opened, and once opened, some doors can never be closed. That was the night Claire's perfect world began to crack. After that rainy night, Claire told herself it had been nothing. Just a ride to the grocery store, just a comment from a young man who had always been kind. But once a seed is planted, it doesn't stop growing simply because you want it to. Jamie started coming by more often, sometimes with Ethan, sometimes without. He fixed a squeaky door hinge, carried in bags of mulch for the garden, even stayed late one evening to help her cook when Ethan was still at work. To anyone else, it was harmless. To Claire, every small gesture felt like a secret waiting to be uncovered. One afternoon, as sunlight poured across the kitchen floor, Jamie leaned against the counter while Claire whisked eggs for a cake. He watched her closely, his voice low when he said, "You're different from everyone else, Mrs. Dawson. You actually see me?" Claire froze, whisk trembling in her hand. She should have laughed it off, corrected him, reminded him of the line neither of them had any right to cross. But when she looked up, she saw something in Jamie's eyes she hadn't seen in years, not from her husband, not from anyone. Admiration, desire, longing, She broke eye contact, trying to steady her voice. "You shouldn't say things like that, Jamie." "I know," he said, a half-smile breaking across his face, "but I had to." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, charged, dangerous. Claire's heart pounded, torn between the life she had built and the temptation standing just a few feet away. That night, lying in bed next to Michael, who snored softly after a long day of travel, Claire realized the truth. Her marriage had become a house of routine. But Jamie made her feel alive again. And once a heart begins to crave what it shouldn't, temptation finds a way back through every door you try to close. Theirs would soon open wider than either of them ever intended. Temptation has a rhythm. It creeps in slowly, then crashes all at once. For weeks, Claire told herself she was imagining it. The glances, the pauses, the almost too long touches. She convinced herself she could stop it at any time, that it wasn't real. But late one evening, when Ethan had gone upstairs and Michael was still away on business, Claire found herself in the kitchen with Jamie again. They were supposed to be cleaning up after dinner. The dishwasher hummed, the radio played soft static between songs, and Jamie leaned close to stacked plates. His hand brushed hers, not by accident this time. Claire froze, her breath shallow. "Jamie," she whispered, her voice trembling. But he didn't move away. Instead, he lifted her hand carefully, as though afraid she'd break, and pressed it gently against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, fast, nervous, alive. For a moment the world felt suspended. She could almost hear her own conscience begging her to pull back. But when Jamie whispered, "I don't want to pretend any more," something inside her shattered. The kiss that followed was not explosive. It was fragile, tentative, dangerous. The kind of kiss that carried more fear than passion, because they both knew there was no going back. From that night on, their secret was sealed. It began with stolen moments in quiet rooms, with hushed conversations in corners of the house where Ethan would never look. Claire told herself it was only temporary, that it filled a void her husband had left behind, that it would end before it destroyed anything. But secrets don't stay small, they grow teeth, and with every stolen kiss, every whispered confession, the danger grew sharper. Because no matter how careful they were, someone was bound to notice, and when the truth came out, it would cost more than either of them could pay. At first, their secret was careful, quick kisses in the kitchen when no one was home. Stolen moments in the car, parked just out of sight. Every touch was measured, every meeting planned like a crime. But secrets don't like rules. They demand more. One evening, Ethan was out with friends, and Michael was away on yet another business trip. Claire lit candles in the dining room, not for romance, she told herself, but because the power had flickered. Jamie showed up at the door with a grin that said he'd stopped pretending to be innocent. Dinner turned into laughter. Laughter turned into a hand brushing across hers, and soon they were too close, too reckless. This wasn't just stolen touches anymore. It was full surrender. They crossed every line they swore they'd never cross. Afterward, Claire sat on the edge of her bed, her heart pounding with equal parts guilt and hunger. "This can't happen again," she whispered. Jamie leaned against the doorway, his eyes soft but unyielding. "Then why does it feel like it already will?" For the first time, Claire realized they were slipping. Fast. What started as a secret thrill was becoming an addiction neither of them could resist, and no addiction stays hidden forever. Because the very next week, Claire caught Ethan looking at her strangely. He didn't know the truth, not yet, but his eyes narrowed when Jamie came over. His voice sharpened when he asked why his mom looked different. The walls of secrecy were cracking. And once Ethan began to suspect, It was only a matter of time before the whole house of lies came crashing down, and when it did, someone wouldn't make it out alive. Ethan had known Jamie since they were kids. He knew the way his best friend laughed, the way he talked, even the way he lied when he said he was fine. But lately, something was off. Jamie lingered at the Dawson home more often, staying behind after Ethan left for work or making excuses to drop by when Ethan wasn't around. And Claire, his mother, seemed different. She hummed when she cooked, wore perfume even on quiet nights at home, and sometimes blushed when Jamie's name came up in conversation. It gnawed at Ethan. He couldn't quite put it into words, but the puzzle pieces were there. And the more he looked, the more they started to fit. One night, Ethan came home earlier than expected. From the driveway, he noticed the glow of the kitchen lights. Inside, muffled laughter carried through the door. He pushed it open quietly, and there they were, Claire and Jamie, standing closer than they should have been. Smiles too warm, silence snapping shut the moment they realized he was there. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked, his voice edged with suspicion. Claire quickly busied herself with the dishes, her back turned. Jamie cleared his throat, forcing a grin. "Yeah, man, just helping your mom fix the leaky faucet." But Ethan's eyes narrowed. He didn't see a faucet. He saw the way Jamie's hand brushed against a dish towel still damp from Claire's grip. He saw the guilty glance they shared when they thought he wasn't looking. That night, lying awake in his room, Ethan replayed it all. The looks, the laughter, the strange distance in his mother's eyes. And suddenly the thought hit him like a punch. No, it couldn't be, but deep down Ethan knew. The truth was there, circling like a predator. And if he was right, his best friend wasn't just betraying him. He was destroying his family. Ethan wasn't ready to confront it yet, but the clock was ticking, and soon suspicion would turn into proof. Ethan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his mother's smile lingering a little too long, Jamie's voice softening in ways it never had before. His gut screamed betrayal, but his heart refused to believe it. So he started watching, listening, testing. The next time Jamie came over, Ethan pretended to forget his phone in the living room and doubled back quietly. From the hallway, he caught the tail end of a whisper, Jamie saying something that made Claire laugh nervously, the kind of laugh Ethan hadn't heard from her in years. When they noticed him, they jumped apart as if burned. Later, Ethan rifled through the kitchen garbage, heart pounding, and there it was, a receipt from a cafe across town. 2 cappuccinos, 1 slice of red velvet cake. Dated the same afternoon. Jamie had told him he was working a shift. He stuffed the slip of paper into his pocket, proof that the cracks in his world weren't just in his head. But Ethan wasn't the only one watching. Michael, Claire's husband, had lived with his own suspicions for months. He noticed the perfume she wore even when they weren't going anywhere. He noticed how Jamie's name kept slipping into casual conversations, and he noticed more than anything the sudden distance when he walked into a room. One night, after returning from yet another business trip, Michael found Jamie's jacket hanging on the back of a dining chair. It was late. Ethan was asleep upstairs. Jamie was nowhere to be found, and Claire's face, when she saw him pick it up, told Michael more than words ever could. That was the night Michael began keeping his own notes, dates, times, excuses that didn't add up. He didn't say anything, not yet. He let the silence build, sharpening like a blade. Under one roof, 3 men were circling the same truth, Ethan searching for proof, Michael collecting evidence, and Jamie, unknowingly, leaving behind breadcrumbs he could never sweep away, and Claire. She felt the walls closing in, but still she told herself she could control it. that no one really knew she was wrong, because soon the secret wouldn't just be suspected, it would be exposed, and the fallout would be deadly. Ethan had reached his breaking point. The receipts, the whispers, the guilty glances, it all added up to one unbearable truth. His best friend was sleeping with his mother. He waited for his chance, and it came one night when Jamie dropped by after work. Ethan intercepted him on the porch, blocking the doorway. His voice shook with rage and heartbreak. "Tell me the truth, Jamie. What's going on between you and my mom?" Jamie froze. For the first time in years, he couldn't meet Ethan's eyes. That silence said everything Ethan needed to hear. He shoved Jamie hard against the siding, fists clenched, tears stinging his eyes. "You were supposed to be my brother," Ethan spat, "and you chose her." Inside, Claire heard the shouting and rushed to the door. She grabbed Ethan's arm, trying to pull him back, but the damage was done. Jamie's lip was bleeding from the scuffle. Ethan's chest was heaving, and the truth was no longer hidden. It was standing in the open air. And in the shadows of the hallway, Michael had seen it all. He hadn't planned for it to spill out this way, but in a twisted way, it was the confirmation he'd been waiting for. His wife's betrayal wasn't rumor or paranoia anymore, it was fact. That night, Michael didn't explode. Instead, he went cold, terrifyingly calm. He poured himself a drink, watched Claire from across the kitchen table, and whispered, "You've ruined this family, and I'm not done yet." Jamie stumbled home in shame. Ethan locked himself in his room, and Claire sat trembling in silence, knowing that the fragile balance of secrecy had collapsed completely. The only thing left now was fallout. And fallout has a way of turning deadly, because soon Michael's fury, Ethan's heartbreak, and Jamie's guilt would collide in one violent tragedy that no one could stop. The Dawson home was supposed to be celebrating Ethan's 21st birthday. Friends filled the backyard, music played, and laughter floated into the warm evening air. On the surface, it was a perfect night, but beneath the string lights and paper plates, tension simmered like a storm about to break. Michael manned the grill with a tight jaw, his eyes darting to Jamie every few minutes. Ethan stuck close to his friends, but his glare never left Jamie either. And Claire, she tried to smile, tried to laugh, tried to pretend the weight of the secret hadn't already cracked her family apart. As the night wore on, Ethan caught them again. Just a look, just a brush of Claire's hand against Jamie's arm. To anyone else it was nothing, but to Ethan it was confirmation. Fueled by rage and humiliation, he grabbed Jamie by the shirt near the side of the house, away from the crowd. "You couldn't stop, could you?" Ethan hissed. "You ruined everything." Jamie raised his hands. "Ethan, listen, I never meant." But Ethan's fist cut him off, landing square across Jamie's face. Neighbors gasped. Claire rushed over, shouting Ethan's name, and Michael, watching from the patio, finally snapped. In one furious motion, Michael shoved through the crowd, yanked Jamie by the collar, and dragged him toward the driveway. "You think you can walk into my house, sleep with my wife, and still come here smiling?" He growled. Claire screamed for him to stop, tears blinding her. "Michael, please." But rage had its grip. Ethan pulled at his father's arm, trying to restrain him, while Jamie struggled to breathe under Michael's weight. Neighbors tried to intervene, voices clashing in panic, and in that chaos, one shoved too hard, one slip on wet grass. Jamie's head cracked against the stone edge of the garden wall. The laughter stopped. The music cut out. Silence swallowed the night. Jamie lay motionless, blood pooling beneath him. Claire collapsed at his side, cradling his face, whispering the words that no one else could understand. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to end like this." Ethan's breath came in broken sobs, torn between fury and horror. Michael stood frozen, his fists still clenched, realizing that in one blind act of rage he had destroyed far more than his marriage. The sirens came fast. Neighbors called it in before Claire could even find her voice. Red and blue lights painted the once perfect house, now shattered by the truth. Jamie was pronounced dead before midnight, and the Dawsons, once the perfect family on Maplewood Lane, were never the same again. Because some secrets don't just destroy trust, they destroy lives. By morning, Maplewood Lane was no longer the quiet suburban street it had always been. News vans parked at the curb. Neighbors whispered in driveways. The Dawson home stood under a cloud heavier than smoke, shame, scandal, and death. Police swarmed the house, taking statements, snapping photos of the blood-stained stones where Jamie had fallen. Michael was questioned first. His voice, usually confident, cracked as he repeated the same line. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to." The officers noted the swelling veins in his fists, the smell of whiskey still lingering on his breath. Ethan sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, face pale, eyes red. He couldn't look at anyone. His best friend was gone, by his father's hand because of his mother's betrayal, and in his gut Ethan carried the cruelest truth. He had seen this coming, and he hadn't stopped it. Inside, Claire was inconsolable. She clutched Jamie's jacket, the one he had left behind so many times, pressing it to her chest. As detectives asked her questions, she barely registered. She admitted what no wife ever wants to say out loud. The affair was real. The love was real, and now the cost was too. When the official word came, Jamie's death was ruled the result of blunt force trauma from the fall. Riverbend turned vicious. The neighbors who once smiled at Claire in church now crossed the street to avoid her. The same women who used to swap recipes with her at the PTA whispered behind hands. She seduced him. She killed him as surely as if she'd swung the fist herself. Michael's career collapsed. Clients pulled away, unwilling to be associated with scandal. His marriage lay in ruins. His son barely spoke to him, and every night he replayed that split second shove in his mind, the moment he could never undo. Ethan drifted into silence, shutting out both his parents. He carried Jamie's memory like a wound that refused to heal. His trust in family, in friendship, in love itself, shattered, and Claire, she carried the heaviest burden of all. Every corner of the house reminded her of Jamie, the chair where he laughed, the sink where he helped with dishes, the back door where he once whispered her name. Guilt ate at her like acid. She no longer saw herself as a wife or even a mother, only as the woman who had set a tragedy in motion. The Dawsons had once been the picture of perfection. Now they were the town's cautionary tale, living proof that secrets don't stay hidden. They burn, they bleed, and they leave nothing but ruins behind. Months later, Maplewood Lane never looked the same. The grass grew tall around the Dawson home, and the whispers never stopped. To the outside world, the story was simple. A bored housewife, a foolish young man, a furious husband, and his son caught in the crossfire. Tragedy wrapped in scandal, but for those who lived it, the scars cut deeper. Michael drifted through his days like a ghost, his once proud career in ruins, his marriage shattered beyond repair. Ethan carried the heaviest burden of all, grief for his best friend, rage at his parents, and the haunting memory that his fist had landed the first blow. And Claire, she lived with silence. She stayed in the house, but every corner carried Jamie's shadow. The chair he once sat in, the driveway where they shared whispers, the kitchen where laughter turned to ruin. She often replayed his words in her head, "You actually see me," and wondered if love was worth the cost of a life. In Riverbend, people still tell the story when the night grows long. They warn their daughters about forbidden temptation. They warn their sons about misplaced trust, and they whisper her name like a cautionary tale. But here's the truth. Tragedy doesn't begin with fire or blood. It begins with loneliness, with a glance held too long, with secrets that seem harmless until they are not. Claire Dawson thought she had control. Jamie thought love could survive in the shadows. Michael thought rage could fix betrayal. Ethan thought family was unbreakable. They were all wrong, and in the end, the only thing left of the Dawsons' perfect life was a legend. A chilling reminder that some secrets don't just break hearts, they end lives, because once you cross a line you can't uncross. Tragedy is only a matter of time. Some stories don't end with justice. They end with loss. The Dawson family learned too late that secrets have a price, and sometimes that price is paid in blood. A mother's loneliness, a friend's betrayal, a husband's rage, and a son's heart break together. They created a tragedy no one can ever erase. If this story gripped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Murder Book 360 for more haunting true crime sagas that expose the dark truths hiding behind closed doors. Until next time, stay vigilant. Because sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones kept closest to home.